get us started.
Yeah.
What's your current view on the sort of tech industry within the UK?
It has changed dramatically in the 10 years. If we look back, I mean, not quite as far as that, but back to 2007, 2008, when the first web missions were taking place. The companies that were on that first web mission to Silicon Valley with me, that Ollie Barrett organised, there were about 20 hardcore tech companies there with what I would call proper technology platforms.
Yes.
If I was to ask for 20 companies of that weight today, I think what you're finding particularly in London, is a lot of the stuff is a bit thin in terms of the tech, and more heavy on the business. I think that's born out of the social media influence, where a number of these young people who want to set up companies are not actually from a technology background.
No.
They think because they're in social media, that they're actually in technology. But obviously, as we know, when it comes to scaling these businesses, if you don't have founders who've got engineering and computer science backgrounds, then it very soon falls apart. So I think the good companies are thinner on the ground in terms of the ability to globally scale, particularly against the American competitors.
Do you feel, Damon, that UK companies are at a slight disadvantage compared to some of the US counterparts?
Well, they're always at a disadvantage in terms of the volume of market. We used to say that you could have 5,000 users testing your product before you left the campus at Berkeley in the old days, and that's true. It's you can pick up speed very, very quickly over there, and obviously if you can pick up volume early, then obviously that's going to drive your costs down. It's going to give you better user experience. So to pick up 5,000 users here for a test is obviously more challenging in terms of the size of the market. Also, there's a different instinct in the American markets. The Americans tend to go with stuff. If there starts to be a snowball running down a hill, everybody picks up with it, whereas UK, the Brits are a bit more circumspect, and almost to the point where if 50% of the market would go with something, the other 50% on principle won't go with it. It's a more subtle market in that sense. But I think the disadvantages have waned. We're certainly different than we were 10 years ago in terms of competing with the Silicon Valley companies. And of course, Silicon Valley itself is not as powerful intellectually or engineering-wise as it was during the dot-com period.
Yes.
A lot of people have gone home in engineering terms to their home markets and are creating their own country's infrastructure.
Yes, for example, one of the things I seen last week on some of the Dublin Web Summit blogs was, I think it was one of the new sort of social, almost bookmarking, was the Brewster company, where it links all your social networks together.
Yes.
They ran a test market, and I think it was around New York, and I think, as you say, it was 5,000, 10,000 people who they got in the beta testing of this very quickly. From my viewpoint, especially in Northern Ireland, to do 5,000 or 10,000 people testing, you're going to be 2 or 3 years trying to market that.
Yes, that's a challenge, and that's where Ireland, and particularly Northern Ireland, in a sense, as a smaller market, has a challenge in terms of connecting to that wider base. I mean, that's part of what we're doing with the Irish International Business Network, which we built out of London 5 years ago. It's not about inward investment into all Ireland. It's about connection out, which is how we've got the network in London and New York, so that we can draw people out into that and create the exposure and access that they need. So my watchword for all of this is about continuity of connection. The challenge for everybody is and even for people in London now, it's a global market. So we're going to have to fly. We're going to have to be away from home. entrepreneurs like ourselves who've been traveling to the Valley and East Coast of America for 20 years, we're used to that. I'm not sure everybody in the entrepreneurial world's up for that, but I mean that's what's going to happen. It's going to be the hubs in Singapore,
yep,
and into Shanghai, the Australasian market obviously because that's still strong, and as we're saying with Omnisoft, we're having to travel and talk globally at the moment, which might lead on to a conversation of some of the things we're doing there.
Yeah, fantastic, Damon. One of the things you mentioned there was with regard to sort of big society and David Cameron. Do you think at this stage that the governments have got a good grasp on sort of startup culture, or is it something that they're still struggling with really seeing the benefit of overall?
I mean, governments struggle with anything to do with this. I mean, they don't understand it. They still don't understand it. They didn't understand it 20 years ago. It's a political football for them. They have to be seen to be doing something about it. But by the nature of government, the people that are seconded to work in government on some of these projects are generally the wrong people. Obviously we're seeing this brand of tech city in the East End of London and down into what is the Olympic Village and Stadium Park, and they're going to push that for all they're worth, for political capital, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, whether that actually does something on the ground for entrepreneurs remains to be seen. I mean, there was already an entrepreneurial scene in and around Old Street, tube station, because it was cheap and cheerful. Incubators were set up there, the tech hubs, and now Google have come in and put the Google campus up there, I think again political reasons, but
yep,
the entrepreneurs are taking advantage of that. Whether that drives business or not remains to be seen, and the consequence of everybody moving there is that the rents seem to be going up, so it's no longer going to be cheap to be in that area. The main thing with anything government oriented is it's always going to be bite-sized chunks, short-term programs, and obviously the mood can change politically very, very quickly. So I think it's important for entrepreneurs not to rely on that.
yeah,
And literally get their head down and get on with what they're doing. If there's a bit of slipstream that they can pick up on in terms of exposure and PR and access, then we'll all do that, and we have done that in the past.
yeah.
But I wouldn't nail your colours to their programs.
No. Is there any of the startups you've noticed coming out of, say, London that you think will have a global impact over the next sort of 12 to 18 months? I just saw 81 million go into something called Deezer. Okay.
Which is a competitor to Spotify.
Okay.
So that's particularly interesting. So like a super angel, Len Bladovic, who runs Access Industries, has put 81 million into that. So he obviously thinks there's some space to play in around the Spotify area.
Yep.
There's question marks over Spotify. It's taken a long time to get a grip, and still the model. We're not sure of the model in terms of making money both for the artist and for Spotify, given the control of content with the record labels. So that's very interesting. That's a major round to be happening in Europe. Big data is the big thing. That's where Conversocial have taken about 2 or 3 million from DFJ Esprit recently, and they're doing customer service using the social media platform that they built. DataSift down at Reading, again, took about 2.5 million end of last year from Mark Suster, and they have the Twitter feed. Basically, they have all the historical data from Twitter back to the beginning, and they're running terabytes of data through their engine at DataSift, and I think that's hardcore technology. Nick Halstead that runs that, proper engineering, proper big tech, and Suster doesn't back stuff that he doesn't think is going to win. So I think they're moving very, very fast at this point. And of course, there's a legacy ones that we always run out. I mean, Hubble are still doing well, both in London and San Francisco and New York. Again, doing a lot of public sector collaboration software. and skim links in the advertising market, affiliate exchange work, well funded again. So there's at the top end there's some good companies. I don't think this is the volume that we're getting funded a while back. There's less money in London. The money's more transparent than it was.
Yep.
The kids can see it. Whether they get their hands on it remains to be seen, but they can see it. 10 years ago, you couldn't see the money unless you were in the inner circle. Now you can see it. But of course, those big £200 million funds have gone away. Venture capital is not there.
Yep.
There was a lack of return on European venture capital at the early stage over the 10 years. So you're seeing smaller funds of maybe about 25, 30 million, the Pro-Founders Capital, Passion Capital, a few of these newer up-and-comers trying to do deals. But of course, they can only do 6 to 8 deals a year.
Yep.
Which, when you think of the number of startups there are, trying to get a round away, some shouldn't be looking for a round. They should be getting on with what they're doing. But there's a lot of people looking for money. You're still only going to get that 2% at the top end going to get funded.
Yep.
And then only a small percentage of the 2% are going to survive over the 5 years. So it thins out very, very quickly, and that's what we need more volume. So I don't want to discourage any entrepreneurs from trying their hand. I don't want to be too. I'm getting old, so I'm getting very cynical. But we need energy. We need idealism. We need the Omnisofts, which is a fantastic success out of Bangor. These are the sort of things we need. But it's a tough game to play. But the answer is it's a global market. You've got to have something that's globally scalable, or you're not going to get funded. I mean, the top end, the indexes, the Accels, Stephen Glanster's at Passion Capital, Michael Birch, Brent at Pro-Founders Capital. They're not going to back anything that's parochial.